In documentary photography, we're attempting to take photos that capture real life. From wide-angle photographs of war to close-up snapshots of people on the street, images can inform an audience about the hidden corners of contemporary life and even become part of the historical record. Whatever types of photos you want to take, whatever your motivation, you can find inspiration in learning a little bit about the pioneers who first used their cameras to inform, enlighten, and improve society. Much of early documentary photography took place around events like wars, for instance, the Crimean War and the Civil War in the United States. Also, photographers joined in exploratory expeditions to capture faraway places. This would give way to the genre of landscape photography. Toward the end of the 19th century, some photographers focused their cameras on ordinary people. A New York newspaperman, Jacob Riis, wrote about the plight of the poor. When he learned flash photography, he used it to expose the dark, squalid living conditions of immigrants and children in the cities. This would become the collection of street photography called How the Other Half Lives. His photos helped bring about new child labor laws and better schools, proving social documentary photography could affect social change. In the 1930s, American photographers Dorothy Lang and Walker Evans were employed by the Farm Security Administration to document the struggles of migrant workers and sharecroppers during the Great Depression. Lang's photos, like the iconic Migrant Mother, helped raise awareness and spur the federal government to send aid. For almost 2 centuries, documentary photography has been a means for artists to shine a light on injustice and expand the circle of concern to include all of humanity. So how do these people use photography to tell the stories that change the minds of the populace? In an article for Adobe, contributors Alexander Cohen and Andreas Gonzalez sat down to give us some advice on where to start. Firstly, they say, it's about following your curiosity. If there's something you have questions about, other people probably have questions about it as well. Being out in the world and taking photos of people is inherently intimidating. But documentary photographers use several techniques and practice the tools of photography to allow them success in this field. Cohen says it's important to remain patient. Your patience has to extend to the process as well. Before you take photos of people, get to know them if you can. Listen to their stories. Sometimes you're so eager to go in and make pictures that you end up walking into a space and not taking the time to introduce yourself to people because you need to get that picture. But it's really important to give your subject space to approach you and also to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Next, it's about cultivating empathy and building trust. No matter your vision, you have to pay attention to the stories of the people you're photographing. Gonzalez says, be mindful of who they are, what's going on with them, and why you're taking certain pictures. Even if you're in a situation making pictures, it's not necessarily the right choice to show those pictures. A personal code of ethics needs to be nurtured and cultivated as you are doing this work. Photography transcends cultural barriers, language barriers, and it can be shared quickly and easily. But yet to be an effective storyteller as a photographer, you must do more than simply observe and shoot. Jamie Davis Smith is a DC-based documentary photographer. In an article to Manfrotto, she describes several helpful approaches to documentary photography that help her capture the story of what she's documenting. She says, know the plot. Every story has a plot, and you need to know the specific story you are telling so that you know where to focus your camera. If shooting a family, think narrowly. For example, instead of telling the story of Saturday morning, focus on the individual stories that happen during Saturday morning. One story might be mom waking up the kids, followed by the story of dad making pancakes, and then the story of the kids getting dressed. Thinking in terms of specific plots will help you get all of the shots you need for each story. Then there's setting. Every story takes place somewhere. Get an establishing shot of where your story is set. Include a person. It's a great way to show scale. Include details unique to your setting to lend context. For example, if you're telling the story of a birth, take photos of the machine monitoring the baby's heart rate, the warming table ready for the baby, and the bands on mom's wrists. These things are all unique to hospital births and will let the viewer know where the story is taking place with a much more interesting sense than a snapshot of the maternity ward sign. Who are the characters you're shooting? Although you are likely documenting a story with multiple elements and characters, get at least one photo of each of the main characters involved. For a family, make sure to photograph each family member. It doesn't have to be formal or a posed portrait, just an image showcasing each character in the story individually. Think about point of view. When telling a story, use multiple viewpoints to show how each person in the story you are telling is experiencing the events that you are portraying. If two people are talking to one another, take a shot showing both of them engaged in conversation for context. Then a photo over each of their shoulders to show how each person is responding to each other. And although this may seem simple, don't forget to move around. Don't use a default position standing in front of your subject. Get on your subject's level, whether that means crouching down on the floor, standing on a step stool, shoot from above, below, behind, and up close. The more angles you photograph your story from, the more compelling you can make the final product. And remember, the devil's in the details. Details help a viewer really feel as though they are in a place. Little things, such as a boy who prefers to sit instead of stand, or a jar of candy on the table to make guests feel welcome. It's the little things that make a story feel complete. And as with any story you're trying to tell, within it has to exist empathy. LaToya Ruby Frazier was quoted saying, "I'm showing these dark things about America because I love my country and countrymen." When you love somebody, you tell them the truth, even if it hurts. And as with any storytelling, it is the truth that is often so much more effective than trying to enhance some narrative that you've made up in your head. Photography is a reflector to hold up to societies and the people who live in them. It is an amazing tool to be used to tell amazing stories. We've learned just a few techniques and thoughts on how to best approach this type of storytelling. So what stories do you want to tell?